Woo. So thank you very much all for coming, and thank you guys to be here in this panel. So yeah, first of all, could you, each of you, briefly introduce yourself to the audience?
I'll go. Yeah, I can go first. Hey guys, my name is Mitchell Amador. I'm the founder and CEO of Immunefi. We're the largest security platform in crypto. We protect about 92% of all TVL in the industry. This gives us a little bit of a unique view into these challenges because we've seen so many ways in which things go horribly wrong and a few ways in which things go right. So we're going to have some fun.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Hey, I'm Netto.eth, founder and CEO of Blockful. Building Anticapture, which is the L2 for governance security, and using the framework we use on the dashboard, we already prevented 2 governance attacks, basically preventing more than $150 million in governance attacks.
Hi, I'm Arrow. I'm a longtime governance participant and governance builder and open source developer at OpenZeppelin.
Thank you very much once again. Well. Just first of all, this panel is called Avoiding the Last Days in Governance, because if we think about it, Ethereum was made to deploy, to run unstoppable apps, right? So if we think about it, when an app has some social stuff, governance bodies in order to to maintain such protocol, then the things not always can go well. So things can happen in order to fuck up everything because maybe the incentives goes wrong or another type of issues, let's say. So let's first go to the first question. So I want to say that what do you see today that is maybe the biggest point of failures in governance these days? There's something like you specific are more worried about right now? He wants to start.
Well, I can go first on that one. We were just chatting about the different angles in the back about what we could go down. But if you ask me what I think the biggest angle is, it's not the technical side. It's not the discovery side. I mean, Anticapture, for example, is a super useful tool. I've used it a number of times now. That's really making a difference. We've seen on the technical side all the different ways we can approach it. But I think that the single biggest failure point for governance today in crypto is that we have bad governance models for achieving the missions that we set out to do. The systems that we design are generally not very effective, and we don't have the social technologies in terms of, say, the procedural layers like you might have with a board of directors, or the ways of thinking about how you might construct such governance boards and governance systems and checks and balances. We don't have any of that in any mature sense. We don't have good social technologies, is how I would summarize all of those, for constructing these systems, and as a result, our systems fail. The true source of governance and security is happening at the level of day one, at the time of their birth in architecture, because the systems fail to make all the participants, some of the most talented people in the world, do what they're supposed to do. And the DAOs fail, and they die, and it's sad, and we can go and look, oh wow, the incentives were wrong from the beginning. That, I think, is the true governance failure point. With everything else, I mean, my colleagues here and I, we're eventually going to solve it, but that one's the tough one.
Well, that's a great, big point of view of that. And you guys, what are your opinions on, single point of failures these days in governance?
I think there's an awareness issue also between stakeholders, delegates, foundation, to understand that this is like a critical vulnerability that can happen, and it's more about like black swan events. And talking about black swan events, I think the largest thread currently on talking just about like token distribution is the governance tokens that are sitting in centralized exchanges. So let's talk about Bybit, or what if another centralized exchange gets hacked? You could basically take over any DAO with the current distribution. So just like going straight to the most, like the biggest single point of failure in my view right now is making sure these assets are safe, like we have good practices on that, because if this happens on chain, like there are some DAOs that are gone.
You don't mean Bybit specifically, you mean exchanges in general? And if you mean Bybit specifically, that would be very impressive for them.
No, I mean just the Bybit incident. It's a way to show that you can actually have like hacks on big exchanges.
Right, so there's such a concentration of tokens in the hands of such a few, number of centralized players that you can execute effective, token-based governance attacks across the board if you can get access to some of these things.
Yes, exactly.
Doesn't this apply even without the hack? I mean, we can look at Bybit, but basically just if, Kraken or Coinbase or whoever may want to monetize their positions, can't they effectively empower activist token holders to go in and launch governance attacks whenever they want?
Yeah, they can actually be the activist token holders as well. As we have. There was a recent vote on PancakeSwap, which was led somehow by like wallets from Binance. So heard this from a PancakeSwap contributor. So
Binance came in for round 2 on the biggest DEX on Binance to go and manipulate the votes in their favor.
Yep.
Woo!
And just confirming they're using user funds for that. They're using user funds for that.
So still. Just a detail, we need to investigate that, but that's from what we heard.
Brave new world, guys. Brave new world.
Expand about your opinions.
I think what's really interesting is, so we do have the issue starting from day one of the incentive structures being wrong, but what really messes things up down the line is when you have these kind of negative actors who you don't want to be as involved in the DAO, evaluating the token at higher than the positive actors because they're willing to pull levers that white hats, if you will, are not willing to pull, and therefore the token is more valuable for the negative actors and they're crowding out the white hats. And then you get into a world that we don't want to be in.
I would like to expand on the incentives side because I think this is the most, maybe the most impactful thing that we can discuss here. What we can say right now is like everything can be, set at the first point of like deploying a protocol if you are going to use a token. So that's the point where everything starts to happen in terms of the future of the, let's say, of the governance system. Basically, it's decided at the first deployment of the token and distribution. So, in that side, I want to hear your opinions of what are the things that you think that are definitely wrong, and then what are, let's say, the principles to say, okay, if we want to improve the way that the governance can start, we should do this, or this. What do you think?
I can start. Like the first thing that we've seen a lot is you created a governance token and now leadership is decentralized, the community is decentralized, you're giving over the protocol to the community. And we've seen that doesn't work. So I think that we as a whole have to do better and ensure that we have some continuity and some leadership even once governance begins. Depending on how that actually comes about, maybe in the new Uniswap style where they have I forgot the form, the Wyoming DAO, or maybe a foundation that's leading it. But you can't just say, here's this amazing project, now every random person take over and keep it going, please.
Well, I guess from the raw governance security perspective, some DAOs are focusing a lot on giving incentives to delegates or like base it on participation. Meanwhile, the main problem is actually the economic security. Like what's the barrier of delegated tokens, of active tokens that are actually protecting the treasury against an attack. And then you need to compare the incentives between how much treasury, like liquid treasury, and by liquid treasury I mean ETH or stablecoin, DeFi positions, how much is that versus the delegated supply, like the value of all the delegated tokens. So that's just like a basic arbitrage, and there are a lot of ways in which you can lower the cost of attack by borrowing tokens, using derivatives, using mechanisms in the governor contract as well. So that's like, I think, is the main incentive or metrics to be aware of to understand the governance security perspective. And going back to the point, also how DAOs are reacting to it and trying to prevent it, which should be more focused on increasing the delegation, the cost of attack, basically.
Mitchell, any opinions?
Okay, I've got a slightly different thought. Okay, thinking about the lessons that we've learned. My colleagues are totally right about the way they're thinking about things, I think. But at the core of the lessons that I feel that I've learned from this experience, and I've been a part of DAOs for literally the last decade. Like the first ones I was contributing to was, of course, Dash way back when, and NXT. And those things were dumpster fires in terms of how we ran them. And the reasons for those was not primarily because of technical challenges. The reasons were because we did not know how to run this type of institution and align people's interest towards creating something of immense value and scale. And we didn't really understand what the costs of that would be, what kind of human cost, how much, well, I'll put this in a founder's terms, right? When you build a business, it extracts part of your soul, and you never get it back. And it's going to constantly ask for more, and the bigger it gets, the more and more and more and more of your soul that it wants to pull out and inject into itself. And that's just table stakes for creating something big and impactful and meaningful and operating at scale. That's just what it takes. And the way that we've structured our institutions in traditional equities and traditional companies, and even, of course, in politics in general, is all designed to navigate these foibles of human nature such that we can go and successfully have nice things. We can incentivize people to create nice things. This is why companies are structured the way they're structured. This is why the board of directors works in the way it works. This is why we have various different kinds of companies and organizational structures in order to deal with that. But in crypto, we've only, I think now, over this last cycle, learned that the simplistic approach of having economic voting stake being the primary means for allocating voting power, and simplistic, right, kind of, I forget what the technical term would be, but just democracy by the number of votes you have. Like, these are not effective means at all of creating long-lasting institutions that can create and build major wealth. And now the flip side of that is what we have learned is that the old ways and the old lessons for how to create effective institutions, for how to create effective organizations, whether that's as small as a rock band and as large as a massive state or a company, these lessons apply just as well in crypto as they did before. And if we can find out how to marry those really well, we're going to create some absolute magic. We already did with some of these crypto companies, like the exchanges, which have become world-defining businesses, right? Tether, Circle, Binance, these are some of the most valuable businesses in the history of mankind. And there's a world where, coming soon, hopefully, something like an Ethereum, a Lido, maybe a Uniswap, God bless, a Sky, maybe these are going to be such dramatic leaps in social technology that they're going to create even more value. But we haven't, that's where I draw the line. Like, I don't know that we figured out the principles for these more trustless systems and how to create effective value generating institutions from scratch there. I don't know that we have done that.
Yeah, I think in the end we are still experimenting this model, and as DAOs get more mature and accrue more revenue, we discover that some incentives do not make sense and create like more risk. And so I think we are on the way to mature the systems. We also see a trend within DAOs to have more like accountability and create better incentives to like also build these teams and make resources more efficient. So it's definitely a structure that has some benefits and some risks we are not aware. And I think it's the first time we actually have some way of sharing ownership and control over something that is permanently digital, because you cannot compare like Uniswap with Binance, because Binance lives off-chain, right? And Uniswap lives completely on-chain. And so this like DAO governance structure, it's it's quite important so you can effectively have the community
I don't think that's
ownership.
really true, though. I mean, Uniswap is an on-chain business, but it's not exclusively on-chain. It's not even primarily on-chain. In fact, the most important parts of Uniswap are the very team of Adams and his cohort in Uniswap Labs, at least up until this point. And those were never a primarily, on-chain institution. They were a company, right? And that's how it's been run basically until several days ago.
Actually, they didn't even pass a proposal yet, and all of Uniswap's revenue has been off-chain until now, which was, causing them to be hundreds of millions of dollar company from fully off-chain things as well.
They're
Yeah, I
still
mean,
just
that's
people
because
at
of the
end.
front-end component, but maybe you can have another example like Compound or other protocols that have
even
like on-chain
better
revenue.
examples, right? So, it's an even better example because the thing that made Uniswap work was obviously its team and Hayden Adams sacrificing 8 years of his life now, 7, 8 years of his life in order to build this thing. Without that, there is nothing. Compound built the leading money market protocol of its time. It launched. They had a great tech. They did an amazing job. They deserve lots of respect. And then leadership stepped away, and we all saw in real time how the protocol languished. Not under explicit governance attacks, although there were explicit governance attacks in that time, which are interesting, technical things for their own interest. But that's not why Compound is like a second-rate, I shouldn't say second-rate, but not the leading money market player anymore. Like they don't dominate lending in the way that they once did. I mean, Aave crushes. And I think that is more of an incentive alignment problem, right? They did not figure out how to pass on the mantle of successorship. And as a result, they were very thoroughly outcompeted, and innovation at Compound slowed to a crawl relative to their competitors. At least it felt that way. And they had a great product. I think they were always a great team. But I mean, speaking of aligning incentives, like in the end, at least as far as I see it, this all is just people. We have some new wrinkles and some new particularities by putting things on chain and by having permanent records. They're all completely transparent, that you can interact with directly, that you don't need the intermediation of lawyers and traditional state structures. And that's really interesting and unique and important. And that's impactful. But at the end, it's just people, right? Who is the new founder who stepped into the state? And is another example, MakerDAO, right? MakerDAO grew obviously a lot, did very well, had some issues, ended up going through you might call it a return to its root or a hostile takeover, depending on whose side you're on. With the founder, Rune, returning, he laid waste to the whole MakerDAO institution. He fired most of the teams, got rid of it all. But of course, now Sky is bigger than it ever has been. Is it all worth it? I mean, I think that question is still left open, but it's very interesting to watch. And it's all people, right? In the end, the whole pseudo DAO structure that they made, I mean, he got rid of it. Rune got rid of it himself.
Well, all that is quite interesting because my general thoughts and all of this is basically, well, maybe the whole problem is how we can avoid, the governance stuff on top of the product that you are building, so that users can, be somehow or have, let's say, previsibility, or to avoid any changes over the rules. Or to depend on third-party actors or people that are not always aligned to the protocol, But yeah, let's say, anyways, we need to try to figure out how to make all this to work for the current protocols that actually have a governance. You mentioned the MakerDAO. We can also mention, let's say, Arbitrum, Uniswap. But my question is, in that sense, from the security point of view, how we could avoid as much as possible the potential governance attacks that we might have, because there are different layers of that, right? Like, first one is token holders voting, something that they should not. Another one is, well, if there is a security council, so they can do things. So my question is, there is a point where we can reduce all that kind of attacks, or do you have a take on that?
There's so many choices. I want to hear from my colleagues here first. I think they'll have something more interesting to add to me. But there are so many choices and kinds of attack. You're asking if all can be prevented? That's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. Yeah.
I think ignoring the actual protocol level things, because for the most part, Immunefi fixed that, and OpenZeppelin does quite a bit of auditing as well. But we have to have it be that like participants in governance believe that long term the governance, the protocol is increasing in value, and as such they won't want to do extractive actions. And the way to do that is you have a chunk of people dedicating their time, as Mitchell says, and that's the way to increase value. And the way to decrease value is to have a bunch of various different teams, especially consultants, who will work part-time on it, dedicate a little bit but not be fully aligned, and possibly chisel away at things, and then people will see, okay, this is not increasing in value, so I want to get my value. But when you show everyone that you're willing to do the hard work to make value increase, then delegates, token holders are happy to hold and be aligned with the DAO.
Well, one thing that we could say is like, we need people to make some value, to provide value to the protocol itself, or the way that they can to find alignment between token holders or stakeholders in general and the protocol, right? But we could say also that there's a cost in order to allow that, because nobody do things for free. They need to find what is the right alignment, to contribute in the short term, mid-term, long term. But let's say that we could, or let's say that we might find the people that could do that for free. What could be, the first thing that they should take from the security point of view?
I think if they're doing it for free, something's wrong.
I think he's looking at us. He's asking for more work.
No, that comes down to, right, from the beginning, incentivizing people and making sure that you have a way for the DAO to have longevity and support a team of people working on it full time, perpetually.
Looking directly into the hostile takeover problem, there are a couple of solutions that we need to consider, but they are so intimate to the governance structure and the token distribution scenario. So there are some DAOs that might be in trouble because of their governance implementation, which expose them to some type of attacks and behaviors you will have a hard time defending against. There are other situations in which the most concerning part is the token distribution, and other scenarios in which the governance activity it's quite concerning. So low participation, low, and then also economic conditions, right? Because with the low participation, and eventually the market fluctuates a lot. Governance tokens, they are even more volatile, and so once the DAO makes more revenue, gets more mature, you tend to have more assets like ETH and stablecoin. These are fairly more stable than governance tokens. And so, yeah, combining all these factors, you get into a really, really risky scenario, which is not usually considered. So first thing, monitoring. It's extremely important to be aware of those risks. And then, depending on the scenario, Security Council, governance upgrade, programs to incentivize delegation, which is something we are leading and experimenting in the ENS DAO. And so it's basically solving these different risk, attack vectors or factors, metrics in which can make you more exposed to these type of attacks. And just to really well define what I mean by hostile takeovers, is really an external actor being able to take over and acquire the governance, the treasury, the protocol against the will of the community. Then you can also question if it's his right or not, because he has some shares, right?
He is part of the community. He is the token holder.
Yeah, he is. But he can capture the whole DAO protocol with less than 51% of the share, which will be super different from a corporate hostile takeover. And also one main difference and thing to be concerned by is that hostile takeovers in the corporate world, they can be reverted, or I mean, there are multiple like poison pills or other type of instruments, and when you are on chain, that's like one transaction away. It's one proposal, so there's nothing you can do after the proposal passes.
And Mitchell, from the side of audits, yeah, we know that we can say that this is just a little aspect of the whole, governance problem. But from the outside side, do you think that there's something else that we could do in order to minimize some kind of problems? Do you think it's possible, it's reasonable to?
I have two funny things. Firstly, the dig at the consultants was very entertaining. Second, I'm always lumped in with the auditors. We do mostly not auditing, but we do a little bit of that too. I mean, we have other colleagues here who are more expert, but we do, of course, do code security and the whole life cycle of that. And there's a lot more that can be done. Like, the nice thing about the governance problem is, unlike when it comes to traditional code security, which is the kind of system where we have quite a lot of constraints on code security that necessitate that we get things right the first time. We have very little room for error that could lead to a vulnerability which occurs and is exploited in one block and leads to a very ugly outcome. But in governance, it's a lot simpler. I mean, you still have all the issues, of course, with the security of governance itself and all those contracts, and you need to go and check them very thoroughly. But they're not usually particularly complex, and unlike traditional, I would say, DeFi applications, which have a lot more ideological or principled-oriented restraints, especially around the control of assets, governance is much more of a green field. And so there are so many things that you can do to make a more secure system. Obviously, getting everything audited and putting under book bounties and getting monitoring solutions up, like, this is the basic stuff, and you can get a lot of mileage out of that. Another thing that you can do, a kind of a simple thing on the security side, is you make everything very deliberately slow, and then you kind of make a lot of these contracts modular in terms of how you design them, so even if you have hypothetical bugs, which you probably won't because they'll be very simple, it may only compromise one system, and more likely if you have someone doing a social attack of some kind, well, you're going to have an opportunity to see that kind of thing. And then obviously the inclusion of circuit breakers is another one. Of course, we're not describing a trust minimized system here, but a security council is effectively a circuit breaker, right? It's a circuit breaker powered by a web of trust that the people say, that looks suspicious. I don't know if we want that. We're gonna stop that in alignment with the mission or the mandate that we've been given or whatever have you. And you could very easily set up multiple of these in the governance process, as, say, any legislature around the world or a Senate may provide in a variety of traditional legislative models. So there's lots of different solutions there on the security front that should work nicely. Everything should be audited. You should have a security council in place. In my view, you should also have security people checking every single meaningful proposal that gets past a certain point. So in the same way, for example, we recommend to our customers every time you do a treasury transaction, you should go and review that code. Most of them can't do it themselves, but we can provide, the best security researchers in the world to go do it for you to make sure there's nothing funny there. If you guys have a serious proposal that's making it through your process, you should go and get that checked. I mean, you should know how that works inside and out and how it's likely to interface with your system. The likelihood of an attack happening that way is low, but there have been cases historically. So I think these things are, what you can do on that side in combination with really understanding your architecture and understanding what the risk points are in design. But to get really back to the core, the biggest vulnerability is having a system that can be 51% attacked in governance in the first place. There's a reason why, for example, traditional corporate structures came up with things like preference shares and various ways of allocating responsibilities and powers in a company, as did every government in the world, right? That comes up effectively with their own constitution, none of the two of which are the same. And just like, I think that the real point of insecurity, again, is getting back to the architecture where we're like, oh yeah, this is gonna work. We're just all gonna hand out 10 sticks and we're gonna vote with how many sticks we have. And this is going to be the way that we're going to govern billions of dollars in the future, and everybody's going to be excited about it the same way we are in 10 years as we are right now. That's your challenge. Everything else on the technical side, and let me touch a little bit about that. DeFi security has been getting better and better and better year over year. We may have had, this is the worst year for hacks on record for crypto, make no mistake. okay? But it's primarily driven by CeFi stuff. Where we look just at DeFi, we're at sub 1% in losses. This is a new record, okay? We're doing really well. In a few more years, you're not even going to think to ask me this question of how do we make the governance code secure. We're going to have a whole bunch of battle-hardened code bases, and we're going to have, you know, sub 0.1% hack rates on DeFi. And it's really all going to become a social problem, because at the end of the day, the social attack vectors are the unfixable ones. There is no solution to them. They are always, as my colleague here said, intimate, right, to the governance architecture and unavoidable.
Well, I'm very amazed with all the talks that are being, you know, talked about here. We have like 50 seconds, but there's someone that wants to make a question to the, yep. If there's no mic, you can take. Okay, all right.
Just a quick one. I don't know if it's going to be a quick one, but so you kind of all agreed that security councils are something that, it's something given, right? Like it's something that will stay for a long time. Does any other solution, like on-chain solution or other trusted body solution comes to your mind when we talk about what comes after the Security Council? Because the title is about avoiding the last day in governance, and the Security Council is like the people that avoids that. So is there anything else coming after the Security Councils?
I have a thought, but you guys go first.
So, in my view, we should try to not have security councils, because the ideal DAO is the one that is permissionless to propose and permissionless to execute, right? And so the goal is to fix the incentives that make the attack profitable. And that's kind of like the hard problem. Token price maybe should go up to increase like the cost of the attack. Also, you should increase the token participation on governance to increase, like, again, this cost of attack, or some type of like buyback program as well. I mean, there are different alternatives. There are different trade-offs. Buyback programs can also not be so good, because maybe you should spend your revenue in growth and not in buybacking your token. And so, yeah, my view is that we should aim for a DAO without a security council, but just because of the nature of the situation, it seems in some scenarios that is like impossible. So yeah, that's my view on it.
Ready for a different take? Let me push back against his cyberpunky propaganda. Don't fall for it. It sounds so sweet. I mean, he raises a really good point about how the ideal, like DAO as it was originally conceived, could operate. But the reality is, as we're testing these systems out in the real world, we're finding that the vast majority of institutions or organizations are not suited to be this type of DAO. Okay? Even the most trustless and the most permissionless of the systems, they have no governance at all, almost, except via miners and stakers, and we would see that in things like Ethereum and Bitcoin. And when you look, and those are arguably like the most, you know, trust minimized or more trust minimized institutions. And when you look at, okay, well then why are we even developing security councils in the first place? How did that happen? Well, I was there for those decisions. I participated in those councils. And they were there as a combination of, number one, legitimacy, right, specifically, so that people feel safe about giving the big red button, which is effectively a circuit breaker, over to people over the whole system, which is a lot of vulnerability. There's a lot of sensitivity. So they tried to find the people, the most trustworthy people in crypto, to have the unpleasant job of being the kings of the big red button, okay? And those are security people. By and large, in my view, they are the most, they tend to be, at least, many of the most ethical, upstanding, and usually ideologically inspired people. They can be trusted with these important duties. But it was a political reason, not a technical reason, why that choice was made. And in my view, a lot of these systems are just as well suited with more simplified circuit breaker type systems, which you could, say, put in the hands of a business partner or a group of business partners or a group of investors. That could also work as kind of representatives of the shareholders or a special committee, much like you might have a special committee decide a CEO's compensation. So there's lots of alternative models from the Security Council that can also work to mitigate risk. But Looking even further, what's after the Security Council? Today we don't have very much, but in my view we should have a lot. And that's going to come, like it or not, with the introduction of reversibility technology over the next 5 years. Absolutely going to happen. The question is, how is that going to be done? And there are going to be versions of the application of reversibility technology, which a lot of major institutions are going to require to put serious amounts of capital on chain, that are going to be more trust minimized, that are more Security Council-y, that are more like, say, you know, if you know Moldbug's idea of the council governing and selecting the king, it might be a little bit more like that. Or it could be more like an open democracy or like an anarcho-democratic model where everybody has one vote, one thing, and there's lots of members. Like, people are going to try different things there, and we'll see what works, and they're all very, very exciting to go and see. And then on the other side of that, you're going to have some, and this is something I know a lot about, you're going to have just arbitration. You're going to have reversibility and things that kind of go at the chain level that provide a way to legally engage at the chain to reverse problematic or hostile actions. And those are going to be legally enforced things. There's going to be a big red button. It's going to have a bunch of security experts, and the security experts are going to do what the arbitrators, probably commercial, or the judges in some cases, if it's, you know, under a particular sovereign, are going to tell them to. And I know this, by the way, because, you know, at Immunefi we built the first on-chain arbitration system that's linked with the existing arbitration laws abroad, okay, that uses these existing arbitration treaties. And this is something that people are looking for. They want it. There's a variety of chains that have kind of built these things. It's starting to come step by step. And like, what's after the Security Council? Well, it turns out a whole bunch of things are after the Security Council, because that's what the next wave of capital is demanding and requiring in order to move serious capital. We're talking hundreds of billions of dollars into this new infrastructure. So that was like a short, well, a long, short answer to what is actually a vast world. You're going to be in business forever, because there's going to be this huge world of governance challenges that people don't even know is coming to deal with exactly problems like this. And they're going to be exciting and interesting and freaking weird in the kinds of problems that people have. But what's coming? A lot of things for every class of customer problem that you can imagine.
Anything that you might want to add?
I think the two of you got it. It's okay.
Yeah, I would only just compliment that maybe that's a trend or not, in which DAOs and like big protocols get more institutional in some way, but will always have permissionless DAOs. Like there will always be some DAOs that are still aiming at that like initial ethos,
right,
which bring us right here, right? And they need to prevent governance attacks in such a way which is different from the corporate way of it. So I think that's my wrap up.
100%. I just hope they're more than, you know, internet monkeys, right, for those systems. But hopefully working with you, we'll make something of it. We should talk about that. Thanks, Vic.
Well, I'm pretty sure that, you know, this panel you could continue for 1 hour more, but, you know, the time is up. So, yeah, thank you very much. Thank you, guys, for being part of it.